Hi everybody, my name is Ola Dabbagh-Roberts. I'm the Learning and Development Manager at the Moir Group. It's a strange time, and it's fair to acknowledge that the way we're communicating with each other, and in particular in this context in terms of looking for a job and fronting up for an interview, which now is a remote interview, poses its challenges. But the job search itself at the moment is obviously challenging, so acknowledging that and wishing everybody the best if you are looking for a role. And yeah, just what I wanted to do today is just share with you some tips around, winning that role remotely. And hopefully some of this will just get you in the right headspace and also offer you a few tips to move forward with. At Moir Group, we always believe starting with your thinking is the most appropriate thing. And that goes even more now. Our thinking is going to be challenged in terms of our optimism, our clarity of what we want, how we see ourselves, what sort of jobs we think we are or are not suitable for. So really getting your thinking right is critical. With that, you can obviously then communicate that effectively, network, even though it's over the waves, the airwaves, so to speak, effectively. And also when you turn up to that interview, you've got some really solid, well-structured responses, and you are clear and you give yourself the best chance. So I talked about thinking. One of the biggest things is at the moment with some of our thinking, it may be fear-based, it may be fixed. So really important to look at how you're seeing yourself and the situation. Stay in a growth mindset. And what that means is looking at the opportunity in this, looking at this as not necessarily limiting you in the long term. So being maybe flexible with how you're seeing this. If you're going for permanent roles, it might be a matter of reconsidering either the level or the opportunity to do some interim or some contract work. So, and remaining also positive in as far as knowing that this is a temporary thing. So whilst there might be a bit of a struggle happening for everybody at the moment, maintaining that growth mindset and potentially doing some learning and presenting yourself as someone who isn't sort of giving up is a really positive thing at the moment as well to do. So keep your mindset focused on growth and the opportunity. Also, take the opportunity in a general sense to enhance your personal brand. So what do you want to actually put out there in terms of your presence, in terms of the presentation that you that you have, the way you behave, what you say and don't say online, what makes you excellent. Really think about that, and is your personal brand and what people see and what's visible to the world out there, is that reflecting what you think makes you excellent, what you want everybody to see. So it's a good time to pause and reflect on that personal brand, how you want to be seen, and making sure that what you do, what you say, how you present aligns with that. So the interview itself, and this is where I want to focus today, is maximising that opportunity means being really well prepared. So before an interview, and you would have heard this from our consultants and no doubt know this innately yourself, but it's really important to know who you're talking to, understanding your audience, not just the person you're being, who you're interviewing with, the organisation, the industry itself, if it's a new sector you're going into, the role. It's really important that you can reflect in an interview a really deep understanding of the role, or clarify anything that you don't know. And what is going to make you stand out is also you're going beyond the call. So in your research, doing things that potentially some other candidates won't do, not just your typical Google searches, but there's other ways of finding out information through media, through people that you know, through LinkedIn posts, whatever you can do to just go that extra mile with your research and prep will hold you in good stead. And also, it's really important that you do sit down and do your thinking about what you can offer, what you're looking for. Like an organisation is going to want to know, well, why do you want this job, as much as they are going to want to know about you and what you bring. So make sure you've done that thinking. And again, I think that if you're working with us or even, just in your own right, you will have stopped to think, well, what does make me good? Why would they employ me? Because they're questions that regardless of whether you're interviewing remotely, they're questions that you will be asked. So think about what you might ask them as well. This shows a high level of preparation. So why is the role available? What are the current initiatives that you might be contributing to? It's fair to say in this environment, it will be a lot of crisis management projects, really just getting through this really difficult patch for a business. And so what sort of questions you ask demonstrates your understanding and awareness of where you might be adding value in that organisation or where your focus might be. Certainly, it's still a good idea to ask, in a general sense, about the company and a little bit more about the culture and the reporting lines, all those questions that make you feel confident about accepting a role, if that's what you're going to do. You really do want to make sure you've got some good questions for the interviewer as well. It's a two-way conversation, I guess. So remotely, and we're all getting used to this, aren't we? How do you confidently perform in a video interview? Well, the first thing is make sure you've got your tech stuff all sorted and your internet connection's right, and test it if you can. Test that as well before the interview time. Be mindful of your background. You don't necessarily have to manufacture a background, but make sure it's distraction free and really professional. Light the room well so that you can be seen easily, so that an interviewer can, isn't sort of contending with shadows or with anything like that, and that it's as flattering as it can be. Your angle and eye contact are important. So front on, similar to where I think I'm sitting in this video, and looking at the camera rather than at yourself or at the actual interviewer. So that way you are maintaining eye contact. It's a strange thing to do. It's counterintuitive, but that's the best angle. Frame yourself from about the chest up, similar again to where I'm sitting, and make sure you're dressing in solid colours. It's particularly if you've got stuff in the background, really important that it's easy, it's not distracting, and that it's not confusing and you're blending into a funny background. So bold colours, straightforward, sort of plainish background is the best way to do it. And wear pants. And I know that sounds quite funny, but you may have to get up in the interview. You may have to, stand up, very quickly without actually even thinking. And if you've got your PJ bottoms on, not only is that not great for your mindset, but it's also not a good look. Keep your body language open and, smiling, building that human connection. So try not to sort of be, too closed in. Just open up, smile, look at the camera, be as authentic as you can be in this strange situation. A good thing to do is practice by making some mock videos of yourself. So a little bit later in this session, I'm going to give you a structure. So pull out some good examples from your achievements, from your work experience, sit in front of a camera and practice. So what that'll do is, if you play it back, it'll give you a sense of awareness of how you do come across in an interview situation in this platform. But also it means that you're going to memorize a lot of your responses, particularly, the basic ones that you would probably have in most interviews around, your experience and that sort of thing. So don't lose sight of the formality. It is still an interview, even though, with our friends and family, we can be a little bit more fluid and silly on video. Let yourself shine through, but it still is a formal interview, so don't lose sight of that. It's also important to pause, because sometimes there may be a lag, maybe not, but regardless, if you want the person listening to your responses to really take them in, to process them and to think about them, don't speak too fast and just speak in a good pace and then stop. The power of the pause is really important. Modulate your voice. It's really interesting to hear a voice that goes up in pitch and down in pitch and maybe a little bit slower as well. So where you can emphasize certain points with your voice, it also makes listening to you in this context a lot more interesting. And so you'll have more of my attention if I'm the interviewer. I've already mentioned ask some questions, but also if you are faced with a difficult one or one that you don't think is appropriate, again, take a pause, take a breath, smile, and be honest. Say, I'm not comfortable answering that question, or that's one I haven't thought about. Perhaps I can come back to you on that one, or I haven't had that direct experience. However, I do have this experience. So don't be rattled and don't lose your way if you are faced with a challenging question. In saying that, active listening is the most important thing. If you want to come across as someone who they can work with, who they're going to enjoy, who they're going to feel that is going to be a really valid part of the team and a collaborative part of the team, having a good intention to listen and demonstrating that in your interview is critical. So not talking over the top of someone, making sure you've heard the whole question before you try to answer it. Again, it's that intention in your body language and you're smiling. Asking follow-up questions is really good at this stage as well. You know, can you tell me a little bit more about that? Or, you know, I understand the company does this, but I'm not quite sure how you do that. So asking follow-up questions relating to what's already been discussed also demonstrates how good a listener you are. So these are some of the questions in terms of interviews that you might get. And sometimes what we think is if we're asked a direct question and we can't answer that question, we feel a bit rattled, and so we may not deliver a good response. So what I wanted to do was give you an idea of what the intention behind some of these quite common questions are. So tell me about a time you had to lead and motivate people through a difficult period of change. What they're really asking for is certainly an example is the most powerful, particularly if it demonstrates the things along here: resilience, resourcefulness, leadership and change. But if you haven't got an exact example, then think about, well, how can I demonstrate resilience, resourcefulness? How can I show that I have stepped up and been a leader? So that's where really doing your thinking right up front is going to be really critical for you at this stage. Next question, tell me about a time where you're involved in an interpersonal conflict or disagreement with a colleague. What did you do? How did it work out? See, at this point, we'd like to probably say, oh no, I get along with everyone, I don't have conflict. Well, that's not realistic. So what we want to show is that we can communicate through conflict. We can display emotional intelligence through conflict. So be prepared with an example that doesn't necessarily show your perfect world. Our careers, our lives, you know, our working relationships aren't always perfect. And so that's okay, as long as you own the story, but also you've got some learning out of it and you can respond to a question like that quite confidently. And you've got a couple of others there as well. And like I said, you're really looking at what are they trying to get from this question rather than do I have a perfect example that fits that? Ideally you do, but not all of us do, and that's okay. So with those questions in mind and the other ones that you will be asked, there's a framework that I wanted to share in terms of maximising your opportunity through really good responses as well. So some of you might have seen this, but firstly I just want to reiterate that it's your mindset, it's your presentation, it's the preparation you put in, and then ultimately it's also how you answer the question. So a good framework is situation, task, actions, and then result. Again, if you go back to one of those questions, say the conflict one earlier, the situation you might describe is, well, on one occasion I had a really difficult colleague who seemed to find fault with everything I did. What I thought was needed was a really open conversation because it was starting to get to me and making me lose confidence. Actions taken. Well, what I did was I asked that person if I could go for a coffee with them, and I just had a few concerns I wanted to raise. They agreed, we went and had coffee. So the result, so what ended up coming from that was a bit more empathy that I had for that person. They were struggling in their role, and also they had a bit more empathy for me. And actually what happened after that was we had a great relationship. So it was really worth doing. So that's how I managed that conflict. So as you can see, even with a difficult question, if you've thought it through and you use this framework, you can respond in a concise, clear manner, and it'll be well received by the interviewer. Another thing, I guess this also gives you the edge is being able to demonstrate how you might start in the role. So some of the things we talk about when we talk about executing, i.e. going into your role in the first 90 days, you can bring some of these things into the interview and let them know and say, you know, I've really thought about how I'm going to learn the business. I'm going to make sure that I can understand the culture really well. I'm going to go in and I'm going to connect with the right people. I know that I work closely with this function, so I'll make sure that I spend some time building rapport and understanding their role and how we work together. I'm going to make sure that I contribute or drive operational excellence. And so how I'm going to do that is make sure that I really hit the ground running, and I'm going to know everything I need to know very early by doing my research so that I can add value very quickly to what you're trying to achieve right now. And I'm also going to make sure that I am, keeping myself up to date with what needs to happen. So what I plan to do is, link into that website and that. So as you can see, if you can demonstrate that you're going to take ownership of your own onboarding, if you like, particularly as organisations at the moment may be hesitant to even recruit, but then when you get on board, it might not be peachy and everything might not be exactly as it should from their point of view. Showing that you'll take ownership over that process will again stand you apart from other candidates. So finally, and this is the last little tip I want to share, is getting the other person to listen is critical. And how you do that is these key things. So having been prepared, making sure you're ready and they're ready, making sure that what you are delivering is relevant, your skill set, but also what's going on for the employer right now. Clarity, are my examples and is the content and is what I'm saying accurate and influential enough to deliver my message? Can I say it once and say it well? This is where it gets tricky. Some of us like to waffle. If you use the structure that I've given you, then you will deliver concise responses and you'll only provide key information. They can ask you for more, but you're just providing clear information. And also, what energy are you bringing? Are you bringing a positive energy? Are you bringing an optimistic energy, a can-do mentality? I know, for want of a better cliche. But if you can demonstrate all of that, then you're maximising your opportunity right now or into the future, beyond COVID-19, to win the role that you want. So be authentic, trust yourself to do a good job, and good luck. Thank you.